to politics now. Achieving the right balance between faster approvals for development and protection for the environment has eluded the government until now. With only 3 days left of the parliamentary year, the clocks in Canberra are ticking. Political editor Jacob Gruber reports.
How are you all? Unfinished business from the government's first term, now being pushed with a new sense of urgency.
This is the week. This is the week that the federal parliament is going to finally pass important and much needed reforms to our national environment laws.
A self-imposed deadline to pass about 1,500 pages of legislation that the government's negotiating partners don't seem bothered by.
If the government won't come to the party and fix it this week, then I put to the minister, let's work over summer. Let's roll up our sleeves. I'm happy to bring the beach towel if need be.
The Coalition is offering a constructive pathway forward with the government. We're not in a rush to fail, however.
Labor used a former Greens senator to set up a taunting from the minister.
Can the minister outline for the Senate how the government's reforms will improve the environment and protect it for future generations?
If you sit on the sidelines, we go with them. If you sit on the sidelines, we'll go with you. Just have a little think about that as the week rolls on.
It's been 5 years since the former coalition government acknowledged the nation's environmental laws are broken. Habitat and species loss is getting worse, while green tape is gumming up approvals. As the clock ticks down on the parliamentary year, the Prime Minister is eager to end 2025 with a big win. One the government says would improve environmental outcomes but also boost economic productivity.
So every day we delay, if we push these reforms back by another few months or another couple of years, what will happen is the environment will keep going backwards and we'll keep seeing those important projects held up.
The reason the minister wants a deal is because he wants a Christmas present. But I think what's more important is we get the laws right. And his basic negotiating tactics is to us that, well, if you don't pass them this week, I'll go damage the Australian economy by doing a deal with the Greens.
While the government is looking for a deal with the coalition, it is also courting the Greens and has offered to remove an exemption for native forest logging in 3 years.
If we accept the argument that these carve-outs that have allowed native forest logging to trash our forests for decades are wrong and should be removed, then they should be removed.
The coalition has its own set of demands that include limiting the powers of a new environmental protection agency and scrapping emissions reporting requirements.
We want to make sure that we safeguard jobs, industry, investment in our country, but also we want good outcomes for the environment.
The Coalition Shadow Ministry met a few hours ago to discuss the nature law overhaul. Liberals and Nationals have long insisted that emissions reporting should not be part of a deal with the government.
Why now do we want to insert emissions reduction legislation or information around that into laws relating to environmental protection? I know they're related, but there are separate pieces of legislation for this.
What this law does for the first time is it acts on Graham Samuel's recommendation to have that mandated climate reporting, but it also links climate and environment law for the first time, making sure that abatement plans refer to government laws and policies. And that would, of course, mean referring to our emissions reductions targets.
Backbencher Jerome Laxale is a leading member of the Labor Environmental Action Network, which has been pushing for strong nature laws.
Labor's law is a good law, and we work with the Greens or the Liberals to ensure that that law gets through. We don't want to see them gutted. If it needs strengthening with the Greens' support, so be it. If the Liberals back the law that went through the House of Reps, that's also a good thing.
This is the third attempt in 12 months to land a deal on environmental law. The positions of the key players, those whose vote counts in the Senate, have been well ventilated. At this point, if the Prime Minister wants a deal, it's up to him. The risk is that he unsettles progressive members of his caucus by shrinking the bill's ambition, or invites a Conservative scare campaign about the influence of the Greens on a Labor government.
Sometimes you get everything you want, sometimes you don't. But ultimately, I think for the environment, for the economy, for our community, these laws need to go through by the end of the week.
If all they care about is passing a bill, any bill, at any cost, I mean, there's a real question mark over what the Labor government stands for.
Graham Black is the Chief Executive of the Business Council of Australia. Today he was in Canberra, part of the furious lobbying efforts. Graham Black, welcome to 7:30.
Thanks so much for having me.
Why the urgency this week? This is a bill that is still going through committee. There are hundreds of pages of legislation. Why does it need to be signed off with all of this activity this week?
Well, it's a really good question. Our answer to that is that we want to make sure that we get the reforms right. Now, we think there is an opportunity this week to do that. There are, in our view, a handful of amendments, so some key issues that need to be addressed in order to be able to turn this package into what we describe as a net overall benefit for business, so that we can deliver housing projects, renewable energy projects and so forth. If we can do that this week, that'd be terrific, and we'd endorse having those bills progressed then. But if we need to take more time, then we take the time that's required.
OK, so you're actually, the BCA is open to waiting until next year?
If we need to take that time to get the right reforms, then absolutely.
So you're here in Canberra, you've been speaking to coalition MPs. Are they listening to your appeal that they should be the ones to support the government's legislation rather than the government doing a deal with the Greens?
Well, we are talking to the government, we are talking to the opposition, and my sense is that there is a desire on both parts to see if there can be an agreement, and we hope that there can be, and we think that's really important because...
But you want the government to do a deal with the coalition?
We do, and we think that that's important because at the end of the day, these are really consequential reforms, and I don't think it's overstating it to say that this is the difference between our capacity to deliver the homes that Australia needs, the renewable energy projects that we need, the critical mineral projects that we need. If we can do that, then there are obvious advantages for Australia. But to do that, we say we need reforms that stand the test of time, and that comes through having that bipartisan support from the two parties of government.
But at the same time, what is it that you would be afraid of if this ends up with the government doing a deal with the Greens? From your perspective, why would that not be the right outcome specifically?
Well, we think that at the end of the day, when you're looking at a government and opposition series of reforms, then that necessarily imports a sense of balance that you're looking for and certainly that business wants to see to guarantee that longevity. If you go too far on one side, too many business benefits or too many environment benefits, that in a sense means that you're less likely to get that longevity.
What would be going too far in terms of environmental benefits? What do you regard as too far?
Well, what we would say at the moment is that there are already some changes that we need to see. So we've been pointing out some key improvements to the legislation that we think are required. We've talked about, for example, the need to clarify the definition of unacceptable impacts on that environmental side. We've talked about making sure that there are appropriate temperings of the important powers of the EPA CEO. Those are the types of changes that we're looking to see in that respect.
Well, let's just talk about that for a minute. So we're talking about the potential to form a new agency which would have a CEO in charge. What is it in the powers that he would have? And I'm imagining this is going to go to stop work orders that he could issue. Is that the core of your concern, that a new CEO of a new EPA could cause a project to stop?
That's one of them. There are two core areas in which we've got concerns. The first is with respect to the stop work orders. Now, I would stress we don't take issue with the existence of those powers. They are important powers. What we're concerned by is that there are, at this stage, no limitations on the exercise of those powers. We're calling for two. The first is, if you make an oral order as the Chief Executive of the EPA, you should be required to give written reasons for your decision within a reasonable time. And the second is, if you make an order after a reasonable period, say 14 days, you should be required to go to court if you wish to extend your order. That's something that we think is just a basic matter of procedural fairness.
We have all seen in Australia, in the annals of environmental destruction, terrible things happen very quickly. So the requirement to produce written orders could be the thing that stops a bad event taking place.
We're not saying you shouldn't be able to issue that order. We're saying that after you've issued the order, you should be required to give you reasons for doing it, so that the person or the entity that is the subject of that order understands the basis on which the order has been issued, what the legal power is, and can therefore consider its position. We think that, as I say, is just a basic requirement for procedural fairness.
In the current draft, the Minister could override environmental laws when it comes to, in particular, in relation to coal and gas, but also critical minerals projects. The Greens want to get rid of that exemption. What's wrong with that?
Well, our position would be that we think it's appropriate that there is that type of national interest approach that a minister can take, but it's for exceptional circumstances. It's not run-of-the-mill, it's for exceptional circumstances.
So are coalition MPs listening to you that this is the time to strike this deal now, or are they still reluctant to give the government a win on this topic?
We're certainly getting a receptive audience. People are hearing what we have to say, and as I say, we hope that there can be discussion around those key points that matter to us, both in terms of making sure that we get the right outcomes in terms of environmental benefits, but also the right outcomes that deliver the housing and renewable energy projects that the country needs. I
just want to put something to you that Bob Brown said today. He said that you and the Minerals Council are inside the tent talking to the government while conservation groups like his own are excluded. Is it true? Do the biggest corporations in Australia have the upper hand in these negotiations?
I think the process that the government's run has actually been very fair, and I've been party to the discussions and the consultations that the minister's led that have involved business groups and environmental groups and others.
So Bob Brown's saying they're being excluded, they're not getting the access that you're getting.
I can't speak to his particular organisation, but I can say that there have been many environmental groups engaged in these conversations, and I know that Minister Watt has been talking to them as well. I think that the reason why we're here now with the opportunity to consider changes is because there has been a really good consultation process so far, and I pay credit to the minister in that regard, but I also pay credit to the coalition because they've engaged and had to listen to what we had to say as well.
And in your judgment, what do you think it's going to boil down to? Where do you think the red lines are going to end up being over the next couple of days?
I think it comes down to that package. Unfortunately, you can't just say it's one thing or another thing. It comes down to looking at the overarching package. And I do stress that it's important that we get it right. At the moment, I'm aware that there are tens of thousands of homes that have been in the system that could be unlocked with the right type of reform. You see that countries overseas, like Canada, have recently made significant improvements to streamline their approval systems. That gets major projects moving. We are in a competitive environment for investment. We need this reform to help drive our productivity, and I hope we can deliver it.
Brown Black, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.